What are we thinking about the new Halloween movie? Good, bad? Are you excited?
So I'm actually excited. It's funny that you asked because I'm a huge fan of the original Halloween movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. So I had my reservations when I first heard about it. I actually liked the 2018 Halloween more than I thought I would. It looks fun. And when I say fun, people are like, what are you talking about? It's a horror movie. It's about Michael Myers.
It does.
It looks fun. I think that it will be a decent addition to the franchise, and
I think Halloween did a better job and has done a better job out of the trilogy of Godfathers of movies, which is Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street. I think they've done a better job with making sequels and making them not be like parodies of themselves than the other two. So yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot more of a chance of it being a enjoyable movie, even for what it is, than if it was Friday the 13th part 99 or whatever it may be.
If you always wanted to know what happened when steampunk, comics, and metal collide, this is the interview for you. Coming at us from all sides of entertainment, founders of Insymmetry Creations, Steph Cannon and Matt Knowles, are creatives who are masters when it comes to eclectic storytelling. Using all forms of creativity, from comics, music, and their art, they will take you on epic journeys that will always leave you wanting for more. Steph, Matt, welcome.
Tell you what, that man, we got ourselves a hype man right there. That's what
I know. That was awesome.
Thank you. Starting off with Steph, first of all, I love the name Steph Cannon. I just think that's perfect for your industry, for like things that are canon in comics. I just think that's amazing.
Yes.
Where are you broadcasting from right now?
So I am in Central California.
Central California. And you, Matt?
I'm in Central Florida.
Central Florida. Oh, so we're completely different times. Right now I'm Central Time, Eastern Time, and oh gosh. I'm glad this was able to work out.
I know.
Like, it's so hard to coordinate this stuff. I just want to say thank you guys for being patient with us. But Steph, I've noticed as a fellow content creator myself, it's fun to be able to write about things that you experience from other people's content, and being a critic, because I know in your background you talk about being a film critic. I'm curious though, when you're watching a movie and critiquing a film, what is something that you just hate? Like, whenever every film does it, and this is your one pet peeve in films. For me, it's J.J. Abrams' lens flare. If I ever see, I just want to get up and walk and leave.
I think I'm starting to notice now. I noticed in something that we were watching last night is and some filmmakers are more notorious for this than others, but the unnecessarily long slow motion scenes that don't need to be slow motion. It's like, especially fight scenes in slow motion, it's just overdone a lot. Yeah. So that tends to be, there are a lot of tropes that I tend to just but that's the first one that popped into my head was that one.
Mm-hmm. I was just recently watching a fight scene, and like the part that made it agitating was like the slow motion scene lasted for 2.5 minutes. I'm like, what's going on? Like, can you hurry this?
That's the Snyder cut of
just a little
probably
bit.
A Snyder cut somewhere.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my gosh, come on.
Yes.
And Matt, I am not the most knowledgeable at metal, but I am really fascinated with how you were able to create an album for a comic book franchise. And I just wanted you to tell me about how has metal really inspired your creativity?
That's a great question. So I grew up as a metal musician. That was what I was. I mean, from high school years, and I was in a band that released a whole bunch of albums, and we did one tour in Europe with a pretty popular folk metal band. One of the guys that was in that band actually is in a very popular band now called Camelot. But it was one of those things where I stopped doing that for a while, and then I wanted to get back into writing about 8 years later, and I wanted to continue to play metal, but I wanted there to be something more. I didn't want it to just exist in the songs. I wanted there to be a story that went along with it. And it started off as just a couple of songs, and then a quick little pitch, and then it was more songs and a full ebook, and then that ebook begat doing an illustrated novel. Then it was trying to release it as comic issues, but it took until I met Steph and she and I started working together that it really became, okay, let's actually make this into real comic books, not just an illustrated novel that was the length and physical dimensions of a comic book. Until Steph and I met, that's when we really said, hey, let's actually make this thing into a real comic. But it's actually helped because like if you think about, say, the Star Wars universe, and you look at like the known movies that are out there, you look at, hey, say, here's the timeline of movies, but then you have like Rogue One that kind of, inserts itself to the side. You're like, hey, you want to know more about this origin story of this specific scene? You have this whole movie that has this origin story out to the side. And that's how the metal music interacts with the comics, where they'll be like, hey, you want to know more about this character Shiver? Listen to this song, and you're going to be able to get his origin story. So we can kind of expand out on that to the side,
Yes.
without it being too overblown within the pages of the comic. So we had the whole first arc for the Crossroads Conundrum. So there's a full 12-song album there that interacted with, and I've got all our stuff sitting right here, interacted with an 11-issue arc for the Crossroads Conundrum book itself. And as you can see, this thing is nice and meaty. There are 11 issues that we turned into this graphic novel. And each one of those songs is, strings along that way as origin stories. Then we just released in the last couple of weeks, Heirs of Isildur versus Tales from Nocturnia. And you may guess that actually has got half and half with our Heirs of Isildur story arc. And then we have our medieval fantasy arc, which is Tales from Nocturnia, because as we were doing Kickstarters, we started writing music for Heirs, and we wrote music for Tales from Nocturnia. And we're like, well, what are we going to do with all these songs from these two different IPs? And we thought it'd be fun to kind of give it that Marvel versus Capcom feel and just put the 5 songs for each IP on there and see which one wins.
I love that. I love the process of just having 2 different passions, but you always wanted to blend together. And then you talked about when you two met, it was able to just kind of work. How did you guys meet? And also, where did you guys come up with the idea for Insymmetry Creations?
So I think we could probably both answer that. I can answer how we met, and then you can go into the Insym part. We actually met because we had a mutual friend in the industry who put up a post on Facebook. He was having a hard time. He was getting a lot of criticism from people at the time. And Matt responded and just kind of offered some words of encouragement. And then like days later, I offered, there was like hundreds of comments on this post because this guy has a lot of Facebook friends. And I put up a post and kind of offered the same words of encouragement. And Matt happened to see the notification and saw my artwork on there, not my personal artwork, but artwork from a comic that I had done. That was a 1-page comic that I had put up in an online competition, and it got finalist. And he noticed that I had it as my profile pic or my cover for Facebook. He noticed it and just struck up a conversation with me. And from there, it just sort of transpired into what we are now as Insymmetry Creations. We immediately hit it off, but we also immediately saw and realized that we were both wanting the same things in the industry as far as what we were wanting to create and do. And we were both kind of in a spot where we were frustrated about going it alone in a lot of ways, I think, is a good way of putting it. So yeah, it was just a happenstance, really.
Yeah, and kind of to build on what she was saying, when very early on, we knew that, we both kind of felt like we knew what we needed, and we both kind of felt like we knew all the aspects of what we needed to know to be able to be successful in the industry. And as soon as we met, and very early on, we're like, yeah, I don't know as much as I thought that I knew. And this other person over here was kind of the yin to our yang. And we both brought very different skill sets and very different passions into where we were. We found ourselves going to each other for issues that we had. We had some very similar struggles with artists at the time, I mean, very, very similar. And we were just like, wow, this person completely understands what I'm going through. And then honestly, it was only about 4 months after we met, I had a show that I needed to have someone else come down with me that was a creative. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, there is no one I trust more with my IP than Steph. And I was like, I'll ask her if she wants to go to the show. And I'm like, but I know it's going to be ridiculous. She lives in California. The show's in Florida. But I went ahead and asked her, and I thought the response was going to be, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but yeah, that's not going to happen. And her response was, when is it? And within that day, she had already worked out the logistics on her side. She's like, how do you think about having this California girl come do a show with you in Florida? And I'm like, okay. And then within a couple of weeks, we had decided, hey, we kind of need to formalize this thing. And we started working together, taking all the things that we did, putting them under the same umbrella. And then within a few months, we decided we legitimately needed to have an LLC that was official for everything that we did. And here we are a few years later, and we've created a ton of content under the Insymmetry Creations banner. And people sometimes want to know, what does the name Insymmetry Creations mean? It simply means this: we felt like our thoughts and our activities were very much in sync and very much had a symmetry to it. And so Steph and I are in symmetry as Insymmetry Creations.
I love that. So I think it's really fascinating how across the world, through Facebook and through social media, creators are able to come together and create across the globe. It's not just, oh, just do the artwork for me. It's you guys are literally creating a full-on, like, essentially a Marvel universe in itself. And that is breathtaking, like, to witness happening from the ground up. Steph, I wanted to learn more about you. I know your background has always been in writing, but when did you start getting a passion to start, when you were creating your own, but like, when did you start getting passionate, like, this is what I want to do? When Matt reached out to you, what like clicked in your mind saying, this is it, let's go?
Oh my gosh. I actually wanted to be a writer my entire life. Ever since I was a kid, I wrote a short story for a competition the local newspaper was doing and ended up winning it. And ever since then, I was like, this is what I want to do. I was heavy in journalism in high school. So I always knew I wanted to go that route as well. And then I was busy raising my kids, and, years went by, and I realized that, now's a good time. When they got a little bit older, I thought, this is a good time for me to start doing what I always want to do. How many people say, oh, I always wanted to do that and I never did? And I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to actually say, I have the time now. Let's go ahead and see what I can do. If it never leaves my computer, then at least I did it for myself. But I realized that a lot of the stories I had in my head, I was seeing in either movie form or comic book form. And I was a big comic fan. And so I spent a few months researching how to write comic scripts, because a lot of people don't realize there's a lot that goes into it. And you have to be very detailed and informative when you hand the script over to the artist. So there's not a lot of back and forth fixing of, stuff that they didn't interpret very well. So I spent some time learning how to do that, and started with that one-page comic that I mentioned earlier. And I had an idea for a graphic novel that I was working on. And so when I met Matt, I was working on the script for the graphic novel, which will come out at some point in time when it's an appropriate time for it to be released. And so, yeah, that was, the comics was just, I found it was much easier. Prose I love, and we have not, that's why we call ourselves Insymmetry Creations, because we want to make sure that we can expand out to other realms of writing and creating as well. So prose is definitely up there for us on some of the things we want to do. But at the time it was, comics it's a quick hitter. I can bust out a script for a short comic pretty quickly and then send it off to the artist. So it was an easy way to get into writing at the time.
I also, when I was researching you guys had a successful Kickstarter for the album, or was it just for Heirs of Isildur?
So we've actually done 5 successful Kickstarters. Mm-hmm. The one we just most recently had, we always try to make sure there's more than one element to our Kickstarter, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we're completely psychotic for doing that. But the last one that we did was for the Heirs versus Nocturnia CD, and then we also had a special edition comic that went along with it. So we always have got either it's a music thing with a comic, or we'll do like a comic and a trade paperback in the same one. But that comic I just showed you, that actually attaches to the backside of the book I showed you earlier, for Heirs of Isildur, The Crossroads Conundrum. That comic actually answers some of the big cliffhangers that people have been beating down our door, so to speak, and be like, you better answer this thing for me. But it also opens up the door for our next arc, which we're working on right now, called The Perilous Prospects. That thing is ongoing, and the art is coming along super well. We have a brand new team working on it with us named Bruno and Alessandro, an inker and a colorist that are just absolutely killing it. We can't wait to continue moving that thing forward. But the reason we call that a special edition is because not only does it have this one-off story that we pulled out of The Perilous Prospects to answer those questions, but it also has all the lyrics and lyrical explanations for the album that we showed you, because we're doing vinyl for that album as well. We have 2 different vinyl variants that are in production right now. And most people don't know that in comics, you can get issues back pretty quickly if you're doing them domestically. For vinyl, there is a huge backlog of vinyl production. So it can take 6 to 8 months to get your vinyl back. So we wanted to do something cool for the people that are purchasing the vinyl. Instead of putting a lyric sheet in there, they're actually going to get a comic with it. So they can see our comic side, they can have explanations of the lyrics, and get a little bit of different feel for what's going on rather than just what you get from a standard vinyl album itself.
I actually heard about the vinyl issue. I had a lot of friends in music who are trying to release like their own albums, but they want to release them as vinyl, and it's just it's not working because it's so weird how something like that just like it faded out and now it's like really popular again. It's crazy how it happened. But I love that you guys have had multiple successful Kickstarters, and what's it like to see your brands being like so cheered on by other people that they help bring it to life? What's that feeling like?
Oh, it's awesome. And it's one of the best things I think for us that now that we've done several Kickstarters, one of my favorite things is because of course you're going to have family and friends supporting you and backing the campaigns. And we have friends in the industry, and it's kind of fun because there's always a couple of friends that will try to be, the first backer. They try real hard to get in there as the first. And so that's always fun because it's cool that people are that excited for what we do. But one of my favorite things is when we have somebody that randomly backed us, that found us either online or through Kickstarter, that we never knew of before, backed our first campaign and has come back every single campaign to back us religiously. And we know their names now, we know who they are and have interacted with them. And that's cool because those are people that you would never have gotten to know and may have never been exposed to our what we do if it wasn't for the Kickstarter campaign. So whenever we see, we'll get a backer, we always, get excited. We'll see their name and we get excited about every name, but it's fun to see those return backers.
Yeah, like she was saying about, it doesn't matter who it is. If we see a new backer come in, it doesn't matter the dollar amount, there's a joy in that because like you said, you're like, man, these people are investing their time in what we do. They're investing their dollars in what we do. And even if it's $1, no matter what it is, that person actually took the time to go to our campaign, to go through the process of clicking the support button, liking it. If it's somebody that's putting a lot of dollars in there, we feel a big, huge responsibility at that point because we're like, these people are investing their money and their time in what we're doing. And we better make sure we are giving them a product they're going to feel like was money well spent on their side. So it's so awesome to be able to go through that and then have the responsibility of knowing we've got fans out there that really are expecting good quality from us. So we always want to release good quality as it is, but there's that even more so because they've already pre-invested their money and time in something before it even has come out. And it's always just blows our minds collectively when that happens.
I love that. I love that for you guys because it's really just shows like this, how one of you guys' creativity is something that I've very rarely seen. I've been talking about it a while, people who merge different concepts and different types of entertainment and types of creating and make it into one thing. I've been like wishing somebody in the comic book realm would be releasing albums along with their comics, because I'm like, that would tell more story, that would give more of a voice to what I'm reading. And I finally found one. So I just want to say, I've been thinking about this for a while. I'm so happy that you guys are doing this. Now, about the stories themselves, what were your inspirations behind each one?
So I guess I'll start with Air since I was the one that started crafting that in the first place. So like I said, I wanted to do something that was going to go along with the music. And I looked at how that music was being constructed. And I was going back to a lot of material that had not been released. It was written for my old band or stuff I had written and just kind of put on a digital folder. And I was going back to some of the lyrics and I was like, okay, maybe I can repurpose these lyrics and change them around and make them new again. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's exactly what steampunk is. If you think about it, it's taking something that looks old or beat down or worn down or ancient and reworking it into something that's new and futuristic. And so that kind of allegory for what my life was became the basis for the literal story. And the original thought for Heirs of Isildur was myself and Corey Steger, who was the original musical partner with me in the project. We were going to have two different characters, and the two of us were gonna, they were gonna be a literal based on the two of us having like this little shop, and I was gonna be the front of house guy, and he was gonna be the crazy tinkerer in the background, which really mirrored what we were musically. But then he had said, hey, look, I still want to be a part of the music, but I don't want it to be presented as this is the Matt and Corey project, because he's like, it's your project. I don't want people to get confused in that. So after getting over that initial being butthurt about, oh man, he doesn't want to be a part of this thing, took the best parts of what these two characters were going to be and turned them into the main character, Michael Isildur. So it's an amalgamation of these two different characters that became Michael Isildur. And then one of the cool things, because I don't want to take too much time explaining it so much here, is one of the cool things was when Steph came along and she and I started working together, it became good to see her influence on the story as well. Even though I was the writer and she was the creative consultant and editor on the Crossroads Conundrum for Nightmare Scenario, which is this comic, and then for the Perilous Prospects, we're co-writing that completely together. Even though, as we say, I'm in the driver's seat and she's in the passenger seat, it doesn't make our roles any more or less important. And one of the cool things, though, was as we were going through constructing some of the issues for Heirs of Isildur, we had a previous artist that had drawn a panel that we had just said, hey, this, these two people die, and we see a medieval executioner. They die at the feet of this medieval executioner. And when he drew the panel, there was just something about the way he drew that executioner that made Steph and I continue to go back and go back and go back. What's going on in the head of that medieval executioner? And we're like, well, you know what? We need to just write an entire story where that's the center point of this story. And that turned into Tales from Nocturnia and this executioner right here, whose name is Beninock. And what we've said as our pitch for it now is Beninock is an executioner that's trying to get out of the family business. He's only seen as an executioner in that town. They don't see him as anything more. And in the first couple of pages of the story, he's just like, I'm so sick of people treating me like this. I'm more than just an executioner. I want to be out of this. I'm sick of this. But the kingdom is having all these big problems, and they keep trying to pull him back into that life of violence. And she and I had such a fun time constructing the arc for Tales from Nocturnia, because some of the most important elements, like Steph's like, there needs to be some familial ties in the story overall. It can't just be about these random people. People relate to familial ties. They relate to betrayal in family. They relate to bonds in family. And, there were some big pieces like that Steph's like, we have to write this. We have to have this in there. And if you look at the story, you'll see, there are warriors and stable maidens that are related. There's, father figures and daughters. There are 3 brothers that are in there that all 3 come from different angles in the story that probably would not have been there in the way that they are without Steph really pushing to make sure that we had that, because people can relate to that thing. They can relate to bonds in family. They can relate to struggles in family. They can relate to seeing families in betrayal. And it was so fun to see our different levels of areas of importance come into when we put the script together.
And Steph? Well, what's your tag on?
Yeah, no, it's well, and one of the cool things is we obviously Tales from Nocturnia is a spinoff from Heirs of Isildur, and both very well fit into the fantasy realm. We knew that we don't want to be known as those writers that only write one type of genre. We want to do it all. I'm a huge horror fan. We're definitely going to we love sci-fi. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that both books, even though Tales from Nocturnia is, it has medieval violence in it. So we tell people when they come up to our booth and they say they have their kid with them and they say, what do you guys have that I could read with my child? We pride ourselves on the fact that Heirs doesn't have a single curse word in it. It deals with some heavy subject matter that the characters go through, but it's nothing inappropriate. And we wanted to try to stay on that same vein. So we knew that we wanted to try to do an all ages title or something in that realm. So we actually had the opportunity to do that with Misfits Clubhouse, which is our all ages title right there. That is got picked up by Scoot, which is an imprint of Scout Comics. Scoot is the all ages imprint with Scout Comics, run by our good friend Richard Rivera. So Frontiers is a magazine style. If you are familiar with highlights for kids, maybe even a little bit of Mad Magazine, that's the style that Frontiers is going to be. It's going to be a bunch of shorts that are all ages. There's going to be puzzles and games and a lot of fun stuff for kids in there. It's a little bit larger than your standard comic size. Beautiful, beautiful cover and art inside. And so we came up with the concept of Misfits Clubhouse, which is a boy and a girl named Miki and Stig and their animal friends, Fairy, who's a ferret, and Sloth, who is, you guessed it, a sloth. And the adventures that they go on, and they have this little clubhouse that they hang out in, or a tree house. And it's kind of the adventures that they go on in their imagination, and a lot about friendship and working together, and life lessons that kids can read and have fun with and learn as well. So we've had a lot of fun with doing that. Is very vastly different than the other two titles that we've worked on, even though, yeah, see, there's Sloppy.
Hey
but we're really
guys,
excited to
how are you
have an
doing
all
over there?
ages title that we can work on. We're very inspired. Yeah, that's our mascot. That's essentially Sloth right there.
Hey guys, thanks for letting me join in the interview. I'm really glad you're
Sloppy.
talking about Misfits Clubhouse. Don't forget we have a brand new full-length issue that's going to come out called Pinball Madness, and I have to learn how to play pinball to save my friends. It's so fun.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, gosh.
Now,
So yeah, we're all over the place. Metal
What-
music, all ages titles. We've got it all.
One of the things that's really fun about that, well, I'll tell you a little story about that. So we just did Awesome Con in Washington, D.C. And that was actually the debut for Frontiers, which was the debut for Misfits Clubhouse. And I rode up there with Richard Rivera from Scout because he's in Florida with me as well. It was a 15-hour drive each way. It was a long drive. But he actually went and got that sloth made at some store, and literally is like, hey, we're going to have a mascot on the drive up there. So Richard actually made sloth for us. So a little slothy got to ride up there and do that. It was great.
I have a weird obsession with sloths. Like, they're like my favorite animal. So it's like,
You're
really
gonna
happy.
love this then. You're gonna love
I
it.
know.
It's so much fun.
I am. I talked about when I introduced you guys. You have eclectic storytellers. You guys can go from one realm to another. But I love how you said you focus with heirs. You wanted to make sure that, like, if a child read it, they can still read it. It's not something that's so gory or grotesque or something that's going to turn people away. It's something that really everyone could learn something and grow with the content. I want to, like, dive more into like your guys' creative mindset when you have an idea, or when you're brainstorming with each other. What methods do you guys use to, like, flush out, okay, is that a good idea, is that a bad idea, things like that? Like, what's your creative process?
Man, that's a great question. And the funny thing is, right before we got on this interview, we were actually working on a script together. And so we have some very, very recent stuff to pull on. So we both are very idea oriented. One of the things that I am the kind of person whose mind moves a million miles an hour. Steph's mind is very methodical, but it doesn't mean that she's not quick-witted as well. And we always will just try to capture as many ideas as we can and then see what works. We had a spot in what we're working on right now where we probably went through 6 or 7 different ideas to even just on a line to figure out what was going to be the right one for the script. And we have to always look at, it's not just about the line that's there, it's how is that line going to work with the overall concept in the story? Is it going to work with what our actual point is? We always want to make sure we know what our concept is and what our climax or our conclusion is, and then understand how long is it going to take to get from point A to the end. And we always don't want to be like, oh, well, let's put that one line in. Well, that line's great, but how are we going to fill in the rest of the story to get to that climax? If we're giving everybody everything at the very beginning, we've kind of like scored all the touchdowns in the first 2 minutes of the football game, and now the rest of the game is just going to be boring. You have to find a way to space it out and make sure your pacing is right. But we always try to make sure that we listen to each other's ideas, because we know that the other one is not just throwing ideas out there because it has to be their idea. It has to be their thing. Steph, early on in our working together, keyed a little phrase for us, and that was 100% 50-50. And what that means is it doesn't matter if it is me doing something 59% and Steph 41%, or Steph 70% and me 30%. We're both contributing ideas into the pot. So there's no need for us to try and go and separate them back out. I mean, think about if you've got a pitcher and you have a few different glasses of water and you pour water into that pitcher, you can't tell which water was put in by which cup. You just know you have a full pitcher. And that's how we always try to look at things. We both are trying to get the best product that we can in the end, because in the end, all that matters is, does Insymmetry Creations have good stories that people are going to want to come back to? And whether it's got Steph's name as the primary and me as a secondary, or vice versa, that's the most important thing in the long run. Because when people come up to our table at an event, or people go to our Kickstarter, all they're going to care about is, do I like this product? They're not going to care about, well, Steph wrote 51% or Matt wrote 70%, because in the long run, we don't really care. We just want good stories.
And we work on video chat all day. I think after all these years, we were coming on almost 4 years, like 3.5, 4 years of working together. And we've traveled so much together that we're past the, worrying about hurt feelings or anything like that. We can speak pretty frankly, and we know how to speak to each other in a way that is going to not come across jerky, basically. But we're on Google Sheets and Google Docs. Matt lives and dies by Google Sheets and Google Docs, and has brought me on board to that. So we're on video chat and we're on these Google Sheets, and we're typing down ideas. But both of us feel the freedom to say, yeah, I don't really think that idea is going to work, and here's why. And that's usually where it ends, unless it's something really weird and outlandish. The other person will usually say, okay, well then how are we gonna go with this idea if that's not gonna work? I think both of us are really good at that, and just saying, okay, this is a work in progress, or we might have an idea that we're not sure about. Let's put it down and we'll come back to it later. We don't spend a lot of time getting stuck in the dredges of trying to beat an idea to death or argue our point across, because in the end we just want a good idea. And usually later on we say, okay, yeah, I can see now why you said that wasn't going to work very well.
Well, one of the things too, to even take it another step past there, is the art teams we're working with right now are basically an extension of that mindset. Raheel Mohsen, who is the artist for Misfits Clubhouse, is an incredible creative mind. And there are some things that we wouldn't have even thought about. And, he just comes up like Steph, even we had a conversation this morning. I had a conversation with Raheel, and then Steph had a conversation, and she's like, I need to literally change that to be my Facebook status. And I will pull it up for you, because it was actually
it's a serious business discussions going on.
Serious business discussion. So let me pull this up for you. So this just goes to show, and there's a point to this that is relatable back to the conversation we're having right now. So Steph's status is let's see here. Never in my life would I have imagined myself having a serious business discussion involving the phrase, when they get barfed out of the space worm, but here we are. And
and it was so funny too, because it was such a serious discussion that we're having.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. That space worm idea had nothing to do with Steph or I. It was something where we gave Raheel a bunch of ideas about what we were doing, and he'll be like, hey, what do you think about if I have this space worm in there? And we're like, okay, let's try it. And then he draws it and it works. And this is something that's happened multiple times in what we've done. And Raheel, just his mindset clicks very good with us for Misfits Clubhouse. And then, when you look at the new art team that's on Airs the Perilous Prospects, they do the same thing, but more from just an art concept understanding. Like, there was a lot of research that the artist team went through to understand what we're looking for. And I would say that we probably have had the most hands-off discussions when it comes to this art team when it comes to what we're looking for as we've ever had, because they've really went to the lengths to understand the concepts behind what we're looking for, to research it, to research us, and to understand what we're looking for. So when we get pages back, there's been very little correction about, hey, we need it to be a different way, because they've really gone to that extra level to understand what we're looking for, and to make sure that we're not having to do extra work to get what we want out of them. And that's helped us to have freer time to be able to go and create more, and be able to do interviews like this, and be able to look at what our next marketing thing is, because there's a lot of time that goes into putting these things together. And if we're investing our time in, working with the art team just to get what we're looking for, that means there's less time for us to do other things. And that's not to say anything negative about anybody else we've worked with, because we've worked with some amazingly creative people in the past. I mean, the art in this issue in Nightmare Scenario was some of our most favorite art. There's some panels in there that some of our most favorite panels that we've ever seen for our stories. But there's just a different level of connection right now that we have with our art teams that we're really hoping to continue to build that, because it's really giving us the opportunity to be able to think about what's the next thing we're going to be able to create, because we know they've got it on the things
really
we're doing
nice.
right now.
It's really nice.
Yeah, that must be like a breath of fresh air, like being able to have like the trust on both ends between you two, but then also when you give it to the art team, you can trust them to make it the best thing possible. It's like I don't have to like hover over you or have you send me a page after page every single time, like to make sure that's right.
Gosh, yes.
You feel
so much
free. And
yes.
Well, one of the good things too that Steph mentioned about the Google Docs and Google Sheets is, we are probably one of the only creative teams you'll see out there that actually writes our scripts exclusively in Google Sheets. And the reason we do that is because we make sure, hey, if you're an artist that's on the team, we're going to link you up to that Google Sheets, so that way you're getting that script right there. We've had art teams right now, they're in Brazil and India. We've worked with people in Guatemala and the Philippines and the United States and all over the world. And the last thing we want is for them to be waking up at what is 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning our time and going, oh, I wonder if there was an update to that script. They can just go pull up their link to Google Sheets. They've got all the information there. They can, if they have a question, they can send it back to us. And it just makes things so much easier and so much more streamlined. They don't have to worry about, oh, well, did I get script version 7 revision 3.7x from this date? Oh no, I'm still on 3.7W. They know that all those revisions and all those notes are going to be there real time. And it's really helped us to be able to streamline and know that everybody's working from the same place. Like Steph said, when we get up, we go to turn things on. She'll turn on her computer. She knows she's in the scripts that I've probably been in that morning because I'm 3 hours ahead of her. She can go and, hey, what's the changes? What are things that are new for me to look at? And they're right there. It's not having to sift through emails to make these things happen. And that's really helped us out with our art teams from all over the world. I think you're still muted.
Oh yeah. And the best part of all that is that it's free.
Yes. Yes, even better.
And I'm really fascinated by you guys' process because of the eclectic work that you guys are doing. And now I really want to know what is, I know you said you're not going to tell me yet, but what is next for you guys when it comes to what's your next big project that you guys have that's in the back burner woodworks that you might be able to give me a little hint about?
Well, I think that, we kind of have hinted about the first, we can tell you what our very near roadmap is. The first near roadmap is that we're going to have the vinyls out for the Perilous Prospects album. We're going to get those out to our backers and get those available. We're going to be, obviously, our goal is, and our plan is, every issue of Frontiers magazine that comes out, which is supposed to be 3 to 4 times a year through Scoot and Scout Comics, we're going to have some form of Misfits Clubhouse in there. We're working on the first standalone issue of Misfits Clubhouse, which we're going to have on Kickstarter, and hopefully going to have that very soon. The main story, that's going to be called Pinball Madness, which Slothy was telling you about earlier, where the kids can't go outside and play because there's lightning storm, and so they end up going into one of the kids' garages, and the dad shows them some stuff, and there's a pinball machine out there, and through whatever means, maybe it's real, maybe it's imagination, they get trapped in the pinball machine, and Slothy has to help figure out how to get them out. So we're going to have that. Then we're also working on the first piece of the Perilous Prospects, which is the next arc for Heirs of Isildur, which I'm super, super stoked that we're finally able to get to that point, because this is something that's been being worked on for, like, the notes of it have been out there on Google Docs or Google Sheets for years. Now we're finally able to explore it, and having Steph's creative mind in there working on it with me is huge, because it would not even be being worked on without her, because I had basically got myself worked into a corner, because there were so many different ways that we could start this story off that we needed to pick a route and do it. And I know that I probably broke Steph's brain with, well, what if we started here? And what if we started here? And what if we started here? She's like, you need to pick a route and go with it. because there were so many different ways we could do it. And it took like months and months and months of conversations to make that actually work. That if I didn't have that sounding board that truly understood the story and wanted to see the story succeed in the way that she does, it never would have been able to get off the ground, because we would have just been spinning our heads around and around. But those are the main projects that we're working on. We've got a appearance coming up next or this weekend in West Palm Beach at PalmCon. We're guests at PalmCon West Palm Beach. And then we've got a lot of other shows we're either guests at or working on. The ones that we know that are definites, we have a show in Atlanta in February of 2022, Steampunk at Atlanta Steampunk Expo that we're guests there, but there'll be quite a few appearances in between now and then, and there'll be appearances after that as well. Steph, I guess the only other thing that we're working on that we can talk about is Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. We have a story in, we were in Cthulhu Invades Oz, which is an amazing anthology from Orange Cone Productions. We get to put a story into Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, which is the sequel. We get to do a story on the knave who stole the queen's tarts. And we're working with James Sims on that story. And they're well put together anthologies. There's a single story arc that runs all the way through, which is amazing when you're talking about 20 to 30 creative teams. And the curator has made sure to make sure that when people pick up the book, they're not just getting all these random stories. They're getting an actual arc that goes across 20 to 30 creative teams. And so it's neat to see the thing come together.
That's so cool.
I guess that's the only other project. Is there anything else we have on the burner that we can talk about, Steph?
I think you pretty much covered it. And well, the funny thing with us is that we will say that often, and then something will come up and that we'll end up doing. So we will say that now, but inevitably, I am sure in the next few months, we will have another idea. We were actually talking, I was with the last show that we did, which was Daytona Beach Comic-Con 2 weekends ago. And as we were driving to the airport, we were actually talking about, okay, you know, what other, you know, what do we want to focus on next as far as trying to get into the other realms that I talked about earlier, which is, you know, TV, movies, prose, you know, those types of genres and realms. We want to not only dip our toes in, but kind of dive in head first. And so we have a spreadsheet with ideas, story ideas we've had since the beginning for almost 4 years now. And so when we have a spare moment, which doesn't happen very often, but when we do have a spare moment, we like to say, okay, let's go back to that spreadsheet and what ideas really kind of grabbing us right now. And so, you know, we'd love to do some type of sci-fi type of genre story that we could pitch to be, you know, potentially a show or movie or anything. So the sky's the limit. We are definitely not at that point right this second, but that is, you know, future plans. That's what we definitely want to try to do.
I can definitely see it happening. Like I said before, you guys are literally building a brand and an image that honestly I think it's transcending, in my opinion, when you guys are creating. You're creating without boundaries. You're like, we have an idea, let's go for it, let's run with it. We're not putting limits on yourself, and you are making sure that things are made correctly, one that they're not just so outlandish in one direction. You're like, what's wrong? Let's reel it back in. We want families to read this and things like that. Yes. I love that. And it's truly, I'm really excited to see what you guys do next. Okay, everybody. If you want to follow them on social media, we have Insymmetry Creations at Insymmetry Creations on Instagram. You can follow Steph and Matt as well. I know it's at Steph Cannon Writes on Instagram. Matt, where can we find you on Instagram?
So on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Anguish at Dr. Anguish. So that's actually, I guess that's where it is on Instagram and on
Twitter as well.
On Twitter, But yeah, we try to gravitate or try to push most people towards the Insim umbrella things at symmetrycreations.com /Insim on Facebook, Insim Creations on Twitter, Insymmetry Creations on Instagram, only because by doing that, then you can get access to everything basically within one click. And what we mean by that is the music is up there. We're going to be putting links to all, because Steph does a lot of, like you said, we started off with horror movie reviews and articles for different horror movie sites. We're going to make sure that we've got all those things linked off of the Insymmetry Creations page. so that way, if you're like, hey, I want to know what Matt and Steph are up to, or you're just like, hey, I don't even know who this Matt dude is. I just give a crap about Steph and I want to know what Steph is up to. That you're going to be able to go up there to the website, and you're going to be able to have access to all those things. We've got all of the upcoming shows that we're going to be on. All that stuff is up there on insymmetrycreations.com, and that's definitely where we want people to go to, and then you can kind of branch out from there.
I want to know what Slothy is up to. Will I get a Slothy blog or something? Because I want to follow him.
I almost feel like Slothy needs his own Instagram at this point. Well, just because he literally has traveled everywhere with us. He was in the backseat of Matt's car driving to the airport. He just comes along wherever. You know, he's our mascot. He's our co-pilot.
I think that's a pretty good idea, you guys. I should have my own blog, a travel blog maybe, of all the different places that I go and the different things that I do. I think that might be a really good idea.
You have one subscriber.
I thought of that idea.
Yes.
I'm glad I thought of it.
I love this. And
There's going to be an Adventures of Slothy Instagram pretty soon, I'm just sure.
Yes, please. So yeah, I love sloths. I wanted to ask you guys, because we said about horror movie reviews, what are we thinking about the new Halloween movie? Good, bad? Are you excited?
So I'm actually excited. It's funny that you asked because I'm a huge I'm a huge fan of the original Halloween movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. So I'm a fan of the soundtrack. I'm just crazy for it. So I had my reservations when I first heard about it. I actually liked the 2018 Halloween more than I thought I would. So I'm there for it. You know, it looks fun. And when I say fun, people are like, what are you talking about? It's a horror movie. It's about Michael Myers. It looks fun. I think that it will be a decent addition to the franchise. And I have high hopes for it. So I'm there for it. I can't help it.
I think Halloween did a better job and has done a better job out of the trilogy of Godfathers of movies, which is Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street. I think they've done a better job with making sequels and making them not be like parodies of themselves than the other two. So yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot more of a chance of it being a enjoyable movie, even for what it is, than if it was Friday the 13th, part 99 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, I'm in the exact same boat. I think, Steph, it's going to be a lot of fun. And usually when I say that, I'm going to scream and then laugh because I'm like, okay, that was kind of funny.
That's the best.
That's how I respond to it. And I agree with you, Matt. I feel like they've done it a lot better when making more sequels that were not necessarily planned than usually, because sometimes when they make them, it's like, okay, that was kind of crappy. It's like they just did that for a cash grab, but I feel like for Halloween, they did a really good job with making an actual, something that I can feel like it was supposed to be there, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. This has been so much fun, guys. Thank you so much for your time. It means a lot to us. You have a good rest of your day. Okay. We'll see you around.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.